Hello everyone, welcome to the Hue Virtual Chat, and let's just say March is going out like a lion. Yes, blowing snow, freezing temperatures, 90-mile-an-hour kilometer winds, or whatever you want to call it. Hey, well, this is Winnipeg, right? And, well, you know what? It's always a great occasion when I can see all these beautiful faces. So, hello, I see Susan. Hi, Linda. Hi, Robyn. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm sure there's going to be a few more. I know Rana's running a little late, and Susie will be joining us at noon. Robyn, is Charlotte going to join? I think she said she was. Yeah. Okay. So I guess before let's open up your mics. What's with this weather? Okay, Linda, the one that makes us. Oh.
You know, my dog was happy. He was rolling around in the snow, just absolute thrilled. So, and it was so sad yesterday too, because it was so beautiful out, and we have this one tiny patch of ice left, and he's such a winter dog that he was just sitting on this one as it melted. Like he just, it was, so he was like, what are we bringing on? Bring on the snow.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, okay. So dogs are happy. That's
dogs
good to know.
are happy.
Okay, that's all that matters. I don't know, and it's just been crazy. Like if you look at the forecast, right? And like, how do we do it as human beings, Susan? Like, you know, like the differential of what, more than 20 degrees? Or just
that speaks to our resilience, you know, especially being Winnipeggers. I mean, we pride ourselves in going from -40 to +40 in the blink of an eye. So I don't know, bring it on.
Yes. Well, and of course, our mental health and wellness experts, procurer of all things knowledgeable, Robyn, how do we do it? How do we maintain our mental stability when we get these little glimpses of, you know, warmth and sun and then torrential downpour and then snowstorms? I don't know.
Look, truth be told, I'm not an expert on anything but myself, but I think in terms of how do we do it, we just work out one step at a time what we want to do. So for me, I love the weather being completely different. I moved to Canada because I hate the heat, and summer here is like, ooh. So this little couple of days is like, woo, party time. But you know, I think people have to find little things that bring them joy, even if they don't like the crazy wind out there today, right? Find something in your apartment that or house or with someone that just gives you a smile for the day.
Or join our conversation, right?
And be here with us.
I know.
Rock it.
Yes. Yes. Well, I kind of sent a note to some of you. I wanted to just tackle this and find out, because truth be told, I don't know if I'm one or not, but the question is, what does feminism mean today? How far have we come? How far do we have to go? You know, what does it even look like, you know, for us that are, you know, living in these times, and then also for the future young women that are going to be coming in and taking over, hopefully, what we've built. I kind of look around here, and we all are entrepreneurs in all the shape and way of the word, forging our own way into the world, expounding our knowledge the best way we can. Is that feminism? I don't know. Charlotte. I know, because no, I usually go to you last, and you haven't been on for a couple of weeks. So, and Rana isn't here yet, and Susie's coming later. So, I mean, now's the time to kind of seize the stage, Charlotte, because we need to know. And I think you're muted.
No, I've
Oh, no.
taken myself off mute.
Okay.
I'm just, my head was growing up to what my teens and 20s definition of feminism was growing up down south in the Bible Belt, and where women then to what they are today are totally different. So my hope for girls, because it'll look different to what it is for me, to what it is to you, but have that conversation with yourself of what you want it to project. I was chatting with a girlfriend last night about feminism to me as strong and having my voice, and that empower that Robyn talks about instead of empowerment, but really having a voice of what works for you, what you want, encouraging yourself to take chances. And if it's that Southern feminine side that I grew up with, that's good too. Like, it's just really about what it is for you.
So have you had that conversation with your girls? And I mean, I would think that they see you as a role model, and how you have, overcome, accomplished in your life. What did you say to them?
My girls are super proud of me, and they're just like, why did it take you so long to find your voice? Like, we wished you had done this a lot earlier. So I'm constantly encouraging my daughters to go with where their passion is, go with what their purpose is. And if they don't know, just explore. And it's hard, I know, in COVID to think about that. My youngest is graduating this month. Like, April is her last exam, finished her degree, and what does that look like? And yeah, I understand with COVID the world is different, but it's starting to explore what it works for her. And she's getting very vocal in what that looks like, and dreaming big, and sharing that with us. And for me, it's just allowing that space to be a witness and to celebrate with her. So one of the things I'm doing is like not telling her what I think she should do, but encouraging to explore and dream big and see where that takes her.
Wow. But is it a wrong thing? And yes, I know, because all of you women will attest to it, that you can voice your opinion, but I guess in a positive way. Like, Charlotte, like, is there, because I'm sure you would like to tell your girls what you think, but is there a positive way that you could do it, that you could have that conversation?
I think of things that were said to me by my parents, and a lot of it was maybe in fear, or not really thinking of the implication of the words. But one of the things that my dad said to me once is, just remember that you carry my last name, and be very careful with what you do with that name. So instead of it causing me to explore and take chances, I was always in fear of doing something that would do something to his name. So the sooner I could get rid of that last name, the better. So because I really wanted my own name, that I could, and if I messed up, or if I did something that maybe didn't sit well, it was on me, not on him. So it's things like that I'm always mindful of when encouraging my daughters, that are my words going to have a negative impact on them, or is it going to allow them to figure out who they are and what they want to be?
Wow. Well, and I find that fascinating, especially in the line of work that both you and Kirsten and Robyn do, and that, words are very powerful and can be hurtful at the same time that we want to, when we're thinking that we're doing something right. I'm going to go to Linda, because she's been nodding her head a lot too. And so, spinning off of what Charlotte said, that fear, And I think most of us are from that era where, you know, you were given everything. You know, maybe it is privilege. Your parents only wanted the best for you, better than what they had. You know, the future probably meant we want you to go to university, get a degree, you know, marry, and, you know, white picket fence, whatever, 2.5 kids and a dog. You know, and obviously that has changed now. And even like maybe from your perspective too, Linda, being a single parent and raising 2 girls, and obviously same kind of thing, case in point, seeing how you have overcome and accomplished so much. Are those fears of those words that mom and dad said to you, do those still resonate when you're with your girls?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. And, you know, I'm sure I've screwed up 1,000 million times with my kids you know, with what I've said, you know, and you know, you try your best, but I don't always get it right. I think hopefully my actions will be what they model themselves on rather than sometimes my words. But, you know, it was making me think, Charlotte, when you were talking about, you know, your upbringing, and my upbringing was slightly different in that my parents were a little bit more like, they were kind of hippies, like in the way that they thought. So I didn't get a lot of prescribed direction, like you were saying, Tracy. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, you have the marriage, and they didn't say that. There was a lot more freedom. And I remember my dad saying he just wanted us all to be happy and just find our own paths. But what I found interesting was, you know, I did the university degree, and, you know, I was raised in that era of feminism, which was everything's possible for you, right? Mm-hmm. The world is your oyster. You know, you can be anything. You have equal rights to men. You know, we were lucky to grow up where we did have the vote and we did have the ability to own property. You know, I mean, I remember my grandmother, my Baba, telling us about the time she remembered when women got the right to vote. You know, it was a strong memory for her. Cars were honking, you know, it was a big deal. And so we grew up with this idea that, you know, we could accomplish anything. And I remember being very confused, though, where I was like, well, where are all these opportunities? You know, that was when I in my early 20s, started to come up against the systems that don't offer the same opportunities for girls and women in terms of networking and in terms of, you know, companies, you know, being left to you to control. You know, there's not a lot of women at the helm of, you know, high revenue earning companies. And so I remember being kind of, there wasn't a word for it that I had, and I was confused by this. And it took me a long time to really recognize how the patriarchy works and how it is detrimental for women, people of color, anybody who doesn't look like, you know, a white male. There was definitely struggles that we had and we still have. And so do I consider myself a feminist? Absolutely. Like, absolutely. Because to me, feminism, like what you were saying, Charlotte, we define it the way we want to. I think that's one of the brilliant things about this time. We have choice. We have our ability to create our own lives. But for me, feminism is economic power and economic, you know, rights to the same opportunities that other people have. And more and more as I get older, I see the financial piece as such a crucial part of feminism and moving forward. Mm-hmm. And so I was so happy when I saw this episode, Tracy, because especially that you said intersectional feminism, because of course, when we grew up in the, in the last millennium, it was, feminism was white feminism. It was not intersectional. it was very much one voice that was being presented. And now I'm grateful that more voices are being heard. And I think that we have an opportunity right now to, I can't remember who said it last week, but to make our economic recovery after COVID intersectional feminism, to lead the way. And I would love to hear what everyone else thinks about that, but I think that there's a there's an opportunity, and we should really be jumping on it. So thank you for bringing up this great topic.
Well, she's finally here, so I might go to Kristen and Robyn though first, because they may not be able to get a chance in, because I know Rana's going to be here to, I guess, give us a good perspective on where she sees it. But I'm going to actually take it over to Susan, though. You've joined us recently, and so I guess your sort of idea, or your history with feminism and everything like that, and what that kind of means to you right now.
It's an interesting topic. Thanks for asking. I think when I grew up, there wasn't specifically talk about you'll go to university, you won't go to university, what is it that you want to do. I always thought I would, because I loved school and it was something I enjoyed. And to be honest, I thought, yeah, I could do whatever I wanted to do, because the opportunities were supposed to be equal. I went to university in, I guess, the late 80s, early 90s. And I found when I started working in the working world that things weren't necessarily the way I had envisioned them. I mean, I remember being suggested that I wear something more provocative at work, and, change what I'm wearing. And, if one of my clients decided to give me kisses on both cheeks, well, it's because he was French and that should be okay. And when I suggested that maybe I wasn't okay with that, I was to brush that under the rug. So I quickly realized that there's definitely a different playbook for how men see the working world versus how I saw it. And needless to say, I quit that job not that long after. It wasn't clearly supported in that particular viewpoint. But shortly after that, I went to a large insurance company, and from there saw that 85% of the workforce was women, 15% maybe were men, and very few of the women had jobs that were managers or directors and up. It was all the lower level jobs. So again, and those that did, they had a hard time of it. If you were a director and up, as a woman, it was much more difficult. Mm-hmm. They didn't sit at the table where all of the other VPs and directors sat at lunch. They were literally working all the time, or kind of more left to their own. So you could see that there was, the story that was being told, but then lived reality was a very different story. So, trying to work around that, work in that type of environment, as some of the other women, Charlotte has said here, Linda said, craft your own type of feminism. How do we move through that, knowing that this is the situation, this is the world that we live in right now, but yet to be able to affect it in a way that's positive for yourself and others, including all of the men around you as well. It's kind of its own challenge in a way that, how far do you push in some areas, and then how do you influence in a positive way to move along with it, I think is sometimes the challenge. So yeah, I've seen a lot of interesting things along the way, and I'm happy that we are where we are. I feel that we're going up and down, forwards and backwards, and sometimes around in circles. And I don't see that as being a straight line forward in terms of feminism, for whatever variation of feminism that is for you. I think it's going to be a bumpy road all the time, because there's so many factors at play. So I don't know, did I answer that directly, indirectly, or in a nutshell, or not?
No, and very interesting observations. And I don't think that those observations have gone away even now. I mean, they still do exist. And like you said, I'm asking the question, how far do we have to go? Are we even close? I don't know. But I guess we'll find out soon. Miss Rana? You're still on mute.
I know, I was faking it. I
I
actually
know.
realized that. Good morning, guys. Sorry I was late. I
No,
was having some facial hair issues. Yeah, no, it's you know, and I'm gonna apologize off the bat. That's my disclaimer. I'm just gonna say what has to be said. Be offended, don't be offended. Couldn't really care. There is no question. I mean, I think just as a starting point, there's no such thing as feminism if it is not intersectional feminism. You don't get to pick and choose whose feminism that you support. Either you believe that all people who identify in a certain way have equal rights, or you don't. So the challenge I believe we are having is exactly that issue, is that there are people in this world who don't even perhaps even recognize what the concept really entails. So when you're talking about feminism, if you don't recognize or actually say it's intersectional, basically what you're saying is I only believe in white feminism, white woman feminism, which was the start of feminism, which is what all this was created on, which left out all people of color. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the starting point. And it's not to be offensive or anything else. I think people are learning as we go along. I think there's a lot of great discussions that are happening. I think that this is why we have these conversations. And if there was ever an opportunity to have proof or you know, evidence perhaps that various social identities will compound to create more discrimination or more oppression or more issues for racialized women, it would be during COVID. Because yes, you know, and I think Susan brought up beautiful points, right? Like she's talking about herself, her own experience, and we've all kind of been through that point. But she said something really specific, right? That was beautiful. That was, you know, really incredible because it helps me feed off of it, right? So yes, you know, if you're in an organization with 80% women, but they're all at lower levels, I can pretty much assure you that those lower levels are not women of color. The lowest level would be the women of color, right? That's just a fact. That's just evidence. That's just, you know, research. You can Google anything and you would find that out. So that's really what the issue is, right? So if we're trying to bring up women, all women, not just one group, that means you have to start. And you know, Linda, it was me who said the only recovery is intersectional. If we start going down this road, we're basically ignoring the group of people who were at the front lines, which were women of color, men of color, immigrant women at the front lines of hospitals, nurses, doctors, doesn't matter. They were at the front lines. They were cleaning up all the stuff. They were the janitors. They were the ones who were at the most risk of all of this. They were the ones who were losing jobs the most. They were the ones who were single family. They were the ones who were dealing with domestic violence in their homes, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on. This isn't a new surprise. This was actually the first time in a very long time that the evidence, the numbers showed that. So people like me could now not just be kind of barking, you know, on the side up a tree trying to get people to hear you. There's actually numbers now, which is beautiful, right? So it's a great starting point. So yeah, you know, when you're talking about intersectionality, basically what you're saying, and I think people kind of misconstrue what this actually means to different people. I think it does mean different things to different people at times, right? But for me, for instance, right, what would my social issues be, right? And politics was a perfect example of it. If you want to hear about it, there's my TED Talk. You know, it wasn't just the fact that I was female. That was the least of my concerns. It was the least of my concerns. It was the fact that I was brown. It was the fact that I was young. It was the fact that I was Muslim, AKA a terrorist. It was, you know, there was all these social compounds, you know, and no matter which way I looked, like I could look, okay, well, there's an age issue, but I can overcome that. Okay, well, then I'm stuck right in my face with the religious issue. If I overcome that, it's the color of my skin issue. If I overcome, you know what I mean? That's what we're talking about these oppressive barriers, these factors that don't allow you out unless people start to see it. And there's a lot of work to happen, right? So I think that, you know, when we're talking about moving forward and how you move forward, I think that law reform is a really important part of it. You know, you have a Canadian government who does absolutely talk about feminist points forward, but then I keep waiting for somebody to say, and I'm writing letters, I'm doing all my part, what I have to do, but don't just land on feminism. Let's not just get stuck on, okay, well, it's just feminism, because we're not defining this correctly. Because it needs to be all of us, right? Mm-hmm. Like the 50% of us is all of us, right? It's not just a certain group of women, it is all of us. So I think that, like Linda kind of talked about economic power. Well, yeah, if you're leaving out, out of the 50% women in this country, if you're leaving out 30%, yeah, it's no surprise that you're kind of, hovering at baseline. You've never really moved forward. That's the reason. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? When everyone's talking about, oh, well, not a lot has changed in all these years, or whatever the topic of the day is, that's why. Because you've assumed that 50% of the population that you are advocating for is all monolithic. It's all the same. And they're not, right? So do you see what I'm kind of getting at? Is that just going to Linda's point, right? Because you made a really great point about the economic recovery, right? So you're not gonna, feminism, just feminism. Oh, we're stuck. We're not getting anywhere. Mark my words. We're stuck exactly where you are, because out of the 50% of women that you're advocating for, you're only really advocating for 20% of that 50%. The majority are women of color. Or Indigenous women, Black women, Muslim women, or whatever version of that is. So if you kind of hear what I'm saying, is that now is the time for everyone to get on board. Mm-hmm. Now is the time. It's the recovery time. It's the time where, after a crisis, everyone can kind of lift up and start to really see where all the emptiness is, where the gaps are, right? And it's a beautiful opportunity if we're able to take it without people getting their back up against the wall. So that's really what the question is, because I think the greatest detriment is ego. The greatest issue that we are all having right now, and I have it every day, and it's no offense to any whether it's white women or Black women or Indigenous women. I think that it's a matter of people just not understanding that we have to all really come together, right, to really move that forward. But you can't ask those who are racialized or those who are oppressed to now start to lift up from their trauma and their oppression to lead the way when we can barely breathe, right? Like be sensible to that part of it, right? So there's a lot of space. And the last thing I'm going to say about it is, I see a lot of random conversations about, which is really nice that people are talking about it, but I really encourage people to be more sensible when they're talking about intersectionalism. Like, it's not just color and gender, right? It's not just color and gender, because when you do that, then you're kind of ignoring, things like, Asian hate, all the hate against Asian, all the hate against women who are wearing hijabs in like Calgary and everywhere else getting ripped off. Then you're ignoring all that part, right? So you have to be really cognizant of the fact that there's just a lot of different barriers, and they're effective, and they're hurting people. And if anybody has any real question about it, all I would simply say is, if you don't believe in the theories, and if you don't believe in, okay, we're just kind of crying, whatever, oh, we're just complaining all the time, or whatever the, the backroom conversations are about, perhaps, do your research. Just do basic numbers. Just look at the numbers. I didn't create them. Those of us who are advocating, we didn't create them, so I see a really wicked comment here. It's advocating with, not for, and that's a really important part too, is that I don't need anyone, or none of us really need someone to take our voice. That's not what we're looking for. We're just asking for people to, just acknowledge it and accept it, and where we need, be the person next to us, right? Because I think that that's been happening a lot too. Where people kind of think that, okay, well, now it's the topic of the day, and, let's everybody get on board, and it's kind of, like trendy now to talk about intersectionalism. Like, come on, some of us have been doing this for 20 years and no one had a clue. All the evidence, no matter what anyone said, no one gave a shit, right? So now suddenly, because it's like something to talk about, great, get on board. But remember, there's people who have done this for a really long time. So don't mute our voices because you want to get like viral for 5 minutes. That's annoying, right? And yeah, so that's my basic part of it. I think that most people would understand that we're just talking about various things. The last thing I want to kind of say, and I said this already, but I think that legislation and law reform has a lot to do with this. Because I think that there's moments where some of us do have the ability to make complaints, like Susan talked about. Okay, well, if you were being harassed in some way in your place of work, you know, and to be able to have the ability to have remedies for various discriminations, you know, because sometimes you can only really check off one box. You can be like, well, I was discriminated against because I was a woman, you know, but then it takes out and it doesn't allow us to really gather more data or information for all the other constructs, for all the other issues. So I think that law reform and just having generalized looking at laws and legislation and policies through a intersectional lens would make a universe of difference as a starting point. Universe in my world. So that's all I have to say about that. Like, love it or hate it, there it is.
Oh, well, thank you, Rana. I know it's you're right. I just want to add to that, Rana, when we're saying, yeah, no, we have to include all women. We doing this show called Healing Hearts, and I had a guest on. Her name is Mary Scott, and some of you might know that name. Rana, you're shaking, yeah, nodding your head. Yes, she's a fabulous lady, and actually done a lot of work at the UN table, and she was recently at this worldwide conference, and she was horrified to hear the stories, you know, of women around the world that still have no rights, that still live in poverty, live with domestic violence, all of these things. Hands up, yes?
Okay, sorry, it's cringeworthy.
I know.
It's cringeworthy. Your own country does the same thing every minute of every single day. Every minute of every single day for Indigenous women, you know? And I love Mary Scott. I think she's a beautiful, kind, generous woman. But my response to that would be like, while you're out there labeling every other country as oppressive, let's look in your own backyard first. Let's look in your own backyard first.
And she did, yeah, no, and she did. We talked about that because the whole part of this show is to bring Indigenous and newcomer communities together, but she was just sharing what she had heard at this conference, and so, you know, as far as us moving forward together as women as we identify with, whether what color of our skin or color, obviously we still have a long, long way to go, and many, many barriers. And welcome, Susie. Hello.
It just reminded me when you were talking, Rana, about the legal reform. I wanted to let everyone know that I don't have the date, but the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce has an event coming up that is Meet the City Councilors. So all of the city councilors are available on for conversations. You get opportunities to sit it's all virtual, but you get opportunities to sit, ask questions, have dialogue. And interesting about feminism, I saw this and my initial thought was, I'm not going to go to that because I don't know what I would talk to these men about. A lot of them are men, not all of them. I don't know how I would, who I'm advocating for. Like I just had this initial no, and then I really had to challenge myself on that and go, no, we need more women of color at the tables. We need to be in the rooms where the decisions are being made. And that means getting on boards, getting on, and getting vocal and making yourself uncomfortable and getting into these rooms and knowing what you're asking for. That was for me. I had to clarify, like, what am I asking for? What, if I have a conversation with somebody who has power in this city, what am I going to ask for? And that's just I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks. Like, if you have an opportunity to create change right then and there, like, what What are you going to ask for? Give me ideas.
Susie? Any ideas, Susie?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, Linda, can you give me some background about the event again? I heard a little bit about what you said.
It is, it's through the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, and it is called, I will just look it up, talk amongst yourselves, hang on.
And I'm guessing it's
There
virtual,
is-
right? So,
So can I
Yes,
just
It
it's
is
use
virtual.
Yeah,
It's-
go
yeah,
ahead.
of
This
course.
Leaders Virtual Dinner.
Oh, okay.
So,
So-
gender pay, equal gender pay, or close the gender gap. Stop. Twinkling down. Funding for shelters for all women's organizations. Even the basic dollar amounts that are going into anything to do with women, whether it's shelters, whether it's health, whether it's blah, blah, like list any topic, whether it's education, health, law, anything. That's including prisons for women's prisons.
Yes.
The list goes on and on. I would say, scholarships, anything to do with allowing women of color, even newcomers, Indigenous women, sponsorships, money to go to school, support to go to school, anything to do with that. Like not having, a token equity, like, oh, we have to put one brown person on a board and no, it's offensive. And I don't want to be a part of your damn board if it's just going to be for you to talk about how you put a brown person on your board. Sorry. So the list goes on and on. So there's many, 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 many very immediate things that could happen. And, like I've said before, any kind of intersectional lens to go over laws and policies, regardless of what institution, would be great. Would be really freaking great.
Awesome.
I think you need to go to the dinner. That's
Yes, everyone come to that dinner.
Yes.
Yeah.
They'll be wondering what hit them.
Yes, love it.
Oh.
Yeah, I hope that helps, Linda. Sorry. I just wanted to give you some kind of thoughts on that.
There you go. Well, I'm going to go to Susie and then Kirsten and Robyn. But I just Susie, I popped into your Instagram live on during the weekend. It was pretty amazing. A lot of interesting. I mean, some of the things you've mentioned here, but a lot you haven't. So maybe give us a little recap on
Yeah.
what you
The
did.
topic of the day was that childcare is essential. And we have this bill that's going up right now in front of the Manitoba government that, according to experts who work in the childcare field right now, is going to decimate the state of childcare in Manitoba. And we don't have the greatest system as it is already. And I don't think local parents, first of all, you're in the childcare system for a short time, right? So you tend to forget and tend to not understand that there are still people who are using the system, even though you might not be. And so I'm no longer in the childcare system, but it's super important, as you've seen through this pandemic, that childcare is essential. And if we want women to remain in the workforce, we've already seen that this pandemic has hit females in their careers harder than any other segment of society. Now you break that segment down into single mothers, women of color, and all of those other brackets in that segment. And the stats are even worse, they're even more dire. So we have to take immediate action on this particular issue. I say that we have to do this every election cycle, but we always hear accolades from politicians who like to talk about childcare in an abstract form, but there's never any concrete plan, right? And the time for that plan has passed. And we saw through this pandemic that people, frontline workers, nurses, paramedics, doctors, respiratory therapists, x-ray technologists, anybody in the healthcare system, front lines, whether it was retail as well, think grocery workers, think restaurant workers, could not be at work if they didn't have childcare. So we have one group of people calling people lazy for sitting on CERB when they had no consideration that probably a lot of those people did not have adequate childcare. How are you going to put your child in a spot that doesn't exist and then go to work? And also if you had to school that child at home as well. There's no accommodation for that whatsoever. And it is a critical issue right now, especially. The lady who joined us on the Instagram Live, Cindy, she works in inner city daycare. And she was saying, like, some of the parents in her daycare don't know how they're going to manage once this legislation gets passed. So if you go on Instagram, there is an Instagram account, Manitoba Child Care Association. They have some great information on there. There's also a letter that you can download and send to your MLA. I'll post that link on my Instagram again. But this has to be, and basically I was asking people to light up the phones for their MLAs, to call your MLAs and to say, we need to do better. This childcare bill, as it stands, cannot pass. You need to fight it, and you need to fight for working parents. You need to fight for single moms. And really, you know, if you are a double income house or whatever it might be, you have more privilege than a single mom. But there are still people in double income homes that are struggling to pay daycare. Double income doesn't mean that you're flush with cash. It just means that you have two people working. It doesn't tell you what the income levels are in that household either. So we really need to be cognizant of the fact that childcare is not a partisan issue. It's not a female issue either. It's not a women's issue. This is a workplace issue, and employers need to be doing their part too. So for example, this is I don't want to say it's an easy fix, but if the system were such that if you had employers taking ownership of childcare, which means that if you are a pregnant employee, you go on mat leave, when you come back, your employer has a guaranteed spot for you, because that is absolutely an HR concern. And a human resources concern and a workforce planning concern. I don't understand, well, I do understand, it's because women are not in charge, but why this is not solved already, because the solutions are out there, but nobody seems to want to take ownership of them.
No. What in particular, Susie, I mean, and maybe it was something, you know, Cindy had said to you too, are there some points in this new bill that just don't work? Like, and that
it had to do with the funding and the subsidies and how they were going to be dispersed. So basically what Cindy was saying in the live as well, and you can go back and watch it, it's on my feed, was that there was $18 million marked from the federal government for childcare during this pandemic, which the provincial government has not touched. That money has not trickled down into the actual daycare and childcare facilities that it was meant for. Like, that is lunacy. There's no reason why that should have been happening. And again, you know, we have funding from the federal government that provincial governments just slide over into another column so that they can make their books look good. And yet families are struggling. That's not appropriate. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. That's not what that funding was earmarked for. It needs to go to where it was earmarked for, which is the families and the children who need it.
Wow. Okay. Well, for sure, put that.
Your MLAs.
Yes. Yeah. And Susie, if you want to just put in our chat too, so it shows up, you know, where people can go,
for sure.
and your Instagram to watch it.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Find from where you live, who your MLA is.
Okay. Well, we're gonna hear from Kirsten now. What? No. She's gonna stay on mute. What? What?
I don't even know what is there a question, Tracy?
I
I'm not
don't
even
know
sure where to start. There's been so much awesome conversation, and Rana, don't ever stop being so passionate. I love watching you and listening to everything you say. Yeah, and you too, Susie. Everybody, yeah.
So, what conversations have you had with your girls? And I mean, you can be who you are, you know.
Yeah.
The oyster is your, I don't know, the pearl is your oyster. I'm not too sure whatever that saying is. I don't know.
You know what, I'm gonna be really, really honest and say in my house we have lots of open dialogue, and there is nothing that that can't be said. And my children, we were just talking about this last night. They were talking in the terms of they were speaking to somebody they knew in their world, and that the parents are having a really hard time because the adult child has different thoughts, different values, different belief system, and it's just not working for the parents in that family unit. And so it came up in my house, and we were talking about how we've always encouraged, we've always encouraged, your own thoughts, your own, there absolutely can be two truths, all of that. And going back to feminism, I have to be honest, I have learned so much from my girls who are 21 and 23. And I absolutely love how they embrace the idea of feminism, because it absolutely is something different to everybody.
Mhm.
I really believe that. And there's no right or wrong, or it's what you identify feminism to be. And what I've learned from them is that there's no negative behind it. It's very positive, and there's no anti. It's all pro. And I love, what has also been said, but I love how it stands for not only strength, but courage and having a voice and being heard. And it's very pro for that individual and not anti anything, right? So they really have taught me a lot on their beliefs and their standpoint when they look at feminism. And yeah, just that's my take on the family stuff. And I hope parents I hope parents are always open to hear what their children have to say and ask questions like, what does that look like for you? Or, no, I don't understand that. Can you explain that a little bit more to me? Because that's really interesting. Yeah, my children have taught me a lot about even my own belief system and how I view things. So isn't this next generation amazing? Can I just say that as well?
Mhm. Yeah.
That's all I have to say, because I know Robyn's going to say something incredibly incredible.
She's shaking the head. Well, it's interesting when you say new beliefs, because Linda did a segment on creating new beliefs, and so maybe this is part and parcel of it, right? And I've learned a lot through all of this pandemic and through our chats, is that really thinking before you speak is big too, and really listening before you spit out those words. And words, Robyn, is my key to you. Everything that this is your time to ramble on a little bit. Talk to us about what's like in Australia. Do they have feminism? Is it intersectional?
Oh my God. Look, truth be told, I feel this weird, it's this weird little fraud bit, right? Because
Well, you're not a fraud. Here's my question. Here's my question to you. Are we idiots? Because no.
Are you idiots?
No.
Oh my God, no. But I sit here in this weird place, right? Having been very clear, I have this straight man's brain in this woman's body, and grew up being socialized as a woman, right? Like, so, if you talk feminism, my dad's the kind of guy that said to my brothers, go out, sleep around, check it out before you get married. And I went, me too? And he goes, no. And I'm like, whoa, hang on. How do you do that? Why aren't we, like, why as a woman, well, in this woman's body, aren't I allowed to do what my brothers do? Aren't I allowed to get the same jobs? Aren't I allowed to go after the same things? So I think for me, and I don't spend a lot of time in Australia anymore, but I think that whole intersexuality issue is screwed up like everywhere. I don't think there's a country that has it right. I don't think there's a group that has it right. Everywhere I go, I see pockets of, oh, it's cool to talk about this for you, and let's have this as the predominant view, but oh, we forgot to ask you over here. And it's got to be about nothing without us. And that's all of us, not just this group or this group or this group. And, when I think Rana was talking before about being on boards and the token brown person, like, we've got to go in and fight together to say, you've got to hear all of us or hear none of us. Like, what's the point of having this pretend? It's the same in the field of mental health, right? Let's have the one person with lived experience, and let's have all these other people that just drown voices out. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't feel, it's weirdly enough, I'm sitting here not feeling qualified to talk about this. But for me, all it is like, if we can get everyone's voice to be heard and sit and have conversations together. We have a shot at it. While we have predominant groups deciding on policies, procedures, funding, then we're, and I won't say it loudly, but we're, because it's going to be the same old, same old. And so, yeah, if we can go and talk to councillors and go, well, you're a bunch of white men deciding what we do, nothing's really going to change. Unless you're truly hearing what's said from communities, and unless you're truly building people up in terms of saying, we want to hear your voice. Because the other piece is we go, we want to hear your voice. Oh, thanks for what you've said, but we don't give a shit and we're going to do this anyway. So
Tracy, you see I've raised my hand there?
Yeah.
oh, sorry, I'll be quiet.
No, not at all. I just shut up for 5 minutes and raised my hand instead of, jumping excitingly into what you were saying, Robyn, because I was listening intently. But one of the things that I realized, so first of all,
You're frozen.
You're frozen. Oh, she's really frozen.
Book. Yes. It is the Inuit Art Center. It's brand new and it's gorgeous. And Steffi, anyway, it's gorgeous. And there's a beautiful vault inside there that keeps all of this Inuit art for display. And on the third or fourth level of the building was a display that was about LGBTQ youth up north in the with the Inuit traditions and Inuit family. And as these stories, it occurred to me that
Oh dear. Aw.
perhaps the term intersectional feminism is confusing for some people. There is that intersectional feminism is decolonization. It is a return to the values that Indigenous cultures have always held. And one of the things that was on the storyboard that said, there's no such thing as transphobia or homophobia in Indigenous cultures because there's no such binary to which they have to adhere. And if we could understand that and embrace that, that would bring us so much more forward. And if we think about the process of colonization with it and the pain, generations of pain that it brought with that, that's exactly what it is it's the enforcing of patriarchy throughout an entire system and worldview. So decolonization to me now is intersectional feminism, however you want to call it. But to me, it is that process of stripping away what we have been taught instead of embracing everything inclusive of who we are and what everyone is, a human being, inherently, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say gifted, but inherent with their own respect, rights, and dignity that no one can take away. And that's what colonization has done, is it took those away. So part of this Inuit exhibit was showing that the Inuit peoples didn't have two names. Okay, they had one name or they had a series of names, as we've learned from Indigenous culture too. Well, they weren't allowed to use those names when the Canadian government decided they didn't want that. So these people were handed discs with numbers on them. And that's how the government was going to refer to them as, which is a completely dehumanizing process, right? And there's this beautiful sculpture in there, soapstone sculpture of this Inuit face, and the face is replaced by a series of numbers. And it is so gutting and so horrifying to realize that this was done to an entire people and they had no say in it. And no one stood up for them. No one said anything. No one thought to challenge it. It was just the thing that they did. And we want to go back to that, or we want to continue that? No, no more. So we need to speak up. And the beauty that is in that building, we do not deserve, because it was born out of pain and anguish and silenced, humans that were silenced. So we need to earn that beauty. We need to earn that trust, and by any means necessary. And we need to listen to the Inuit and Indigenous peoples who are going to tell us how we earn that back. We don't get to decide that anymore.
Wow.
That's all.
Wow. Pretty powerful. I know the Hamayork is an amazing place, and it's interesting that, yes, you know, and we're very fortunate to have it here, but also learning that there's, I guess, Rana, you're right. You know, when I mentioned about Mary at the UN and saying that, well, you know, look in our own backyard, there's a lot of things that, you know, our own country has done. And I'm actually just reading a book by Winnipeg author Sally Ito, The Emperor's Orphans. So it's all about the 4,000 Japanese that were told, you go back to your country. And these are Canadians. They were born here. And so they go back to Japan and they're nothing. They were promised free boat ride and there are people there waiting for them. They would have their land. They had nothing. They went back home to Japan, which was not really their country, and treated like foreigners. So, and then plus the internment too as well. I mean, so it's sad, you know, it's horrible parts of history that our country has to blame. And we're talking simply about, you know, moving forward as women as a whole, and, you know, starting at our basics, talking to our city councilors. Hopefully, you know, we can make a change. Because you're right, I mean, we can have these conversations, but if we're not, nothing is going to happen, then it's got to start somewhere. So I thank both all of you for having all of these important discussions. And I don't know, where do we go from here, ladies? I'm game. I guess, do we go to the Winnipeg Chamber of
We
Commerce
smash the
dinner?
patriarchy every single day, Tracy. That's all.
Yeah,
Keep smashing.
yeah.
Can I
Keep
just
talking.
Yes, someone will hear. Yeah.
Oh, definitely, Susie. I think, I'm gonna say this because I feel like it's an obligation. I know, whatever, you know, I'm just gonna be like, but literally, like, do like, and I feel like I just want to go around now and just be like, delete, 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 delete in life. Literally, if your first recognition and understanding is not any feminism, don't say the words feminism unless you are you're understanding that it has to be intersectional. Unless you do that, it's a failed start to begin with. You're done anyways. You've already failed. It's over, right? And I've already made that point about, you don't like to pick and choose who's worthy of an equal right within your own group is kind of sick. So let's start with our own first. And I'm kind of at that point right now because I feel like there's this constant arguments about like, well, it's all, you know, it could be whatever. No, equality means equality. Like, how do you get to choose whose life is more valuable? Like, it's BS. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's hard for people to swallow. Like, it's definitely hard for people to swallow. If you're gonna say, if you're gonna be like, any feminism has to be intersectional, full stop, or it's not feminism. Then you're basically supporting the patriarchy. You're living off the women of color's oppression. You support basically the racialization of women of color. Full stop. That's just what it means. You know. So I just think we need to stop beating around the bush and having these conversations. Those are just the facts. Whether you like it or you're uncomfortable with it or you enjoy it, really doesn't matter. Those are the facts. So I would just want to leave on that note. Is just that, you know, let's leave here and be like, okay, every time I say feminism, I have to be like, okay, and that includes and that acknowledges and that recognizes intersectional. And that's it. You know, start doing some research, start looking into what it means. Our support means your support means our support. It's a unified front if we can all get on the same page. Or else it's like divide and conquer internally. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my 5 cents about it. My last word, I promise.
No, I don't think it'll be your last word.
Sorry, I'm all fired up. I'm pulling a Susie. Pulling a Susie today.
Well, it's a perfect campaign. And if we're going to do something, then if it's anything to teach everybody what intersectional feminism is, then I think now is the time. Because, I mean, it's like what Susie has been saying too as well, whether it's decolonization, and I totally understand that. And maybe there are other words too that we can add onto it. As long as it's educating people on what it all means, right?
and let's not get confused or keep out of our sight lines is that this work is hard in the sense that if you are a woman of color or a person of color, and even I acknowledge the privilege that I have in that segment, there's still some things that I want to say that I can't say because it's not safe for me to say them, and I still have to live and work in this town. And I have thoughts. I have many thoughts. And the thing is that when we are conditioned to believe that the status quo is for our own good, it's very hard to push back against that. But if you start to frame things in that decolonization lens, in that intersectional feminism lens, in the lens that if the person who has the least amount of support in society right now were in front of this option, would it suit them or not? Things become very clear. Okay, and that's the lens that we all need to look through. And only when we have safety in numbers and safety in pushing back against this system, really, will we be able to call out things that are blatant to me, but not necessarily blatant to somebody else. And that's the thing, is that there are lots of people who think they are doing good things right now, but all they're doing is perpetuating a stereotype or perpetuating harm. And we need to really examine that. So thank you, Tracy, for this opportunity.
No, and let me say that, everybody that we bring in, I think, are all on board with the two of you. That's why we started this conversation. And, people have to come here with an open mind and an open heart. And I wanted just to have a safe place for people to say how they feel and what they want to say. So hopefully let's invite some city councilors then maybe to our next show. What about Miss Santos? Susie, yes. See if we can bring her on.
She's on that list for the event too with Linda.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think she's, felt a little bit of the hypocrisy or whatever you want to call it of City Hall too.
I wouldn't want to read her email. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that might be a good one to bring on too, and encourage, please, more women. Whoever you would like to have in this conversation, because you know what? How we're going to do the healing and how we're going to move forward is sharing other people's stories. I've learned that, and we've learned that through. Oh, and next week it's our 60th show. So I encourage everybody, yes, bring your party hats. I'm going to have a little champagne. I don't care. I'm not going anywhere. And Rana, I love the hair. Okay, so
Thank you.
60th show, so celebration. And, we'll keep in mind, we've learned new words now, intersectional feminism and decolonization. And moving forward, let's share more on positive things on how we can enforce that in different ways. Right? And not just be the colored person on the board.
It's called tokenism. Sorry.
Oh my goodness. Well, so good to see all of you. Have I think the sun is coming out. I can see through my basement window. But, and hopefully enjoy this week. And happy Easter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody going out on the patio? No.
Not today.
Not today. Well, not today. Not today. No. All right.
And
Well, stay
belated
safe.
Passover to everyone who celebrates as well.
Yes, and Passover too. Thank you so much. So stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you next Tuesday. We'll be 60 years old. Oh, no, not.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Just feels like it. Yeah.